And this is Infinite Modesty Design. I want to thank everyone for joining me today. For those who joined in the live or who joined the replay, I want to thank you so much for joining me today. Of course. So who we are, we teach sewing classes. I love teaching sewing classes by the grace of God. The Lord have blessed me with that skill since I was a little girl. And that's one of my passion itself to share, of course, with the world. Now, one of my greatest passion as well is to let you know that Jesus Christ loves you. And one of the greatest gifts you could give yourself, of course, for 2024 is to surrender your life to him as your personal Lord and Savior. All right, guys. So now in this quick DIY live, I didn't even send out any email to any of my followers. I just wanted to do a brief live. And of course, I will send it to you guys in email. We're only going to talk about the sewing tools for essential sewing tools in general. So for some of us that know how to sew already, my goal by the grace of God is to start to come up with more live, because I remember during COVID, I did a lot of lives and I had a lot of people who was interested in sewing online. And then after everything kind of slowed down a bit. So, but one of my goals as well is to start doing this back in 2024. And more so, I would tailor a lot intermediate, advanced lives as well, because I always tailor for beginner, but I want to do a little bit upscale this year. So by the grace of God, the Lord would help me to come out in this direction. So thank you so much for those who joining me on Instagram. I appreciate you joining me, and also for those who joining me wherever, either through my YouTube channel or my Facebook page. All right, so let's get started, guys. So what are some of the sewing tools you may need itself, whether in your sewing journey, whether you're starting itself or you are progressing in your sewing or you even advanced sewing? We're just going to go through a few of the sewing tools and notches here today. So for some of you guys, if you have more sewing tools and you want to comment it below, you could definitely let us know that you have this sewing tools and that sewing tools. That is awesome itself to kind of spice things up here today. So one of the first thing I would say here, you definitely need a tape measurement. So tape measurement is essential tool itself you need, of course, in your sewing journey. What we all know in general, you could start with a sewing machine. I have a sewing machine here. It's not an essential. If you really want, you're desperate to sew and you know what, you don't have the means to start to buy a sewing machine, you could of course start with needle and thread. But of course, as you go along, a sewing machine is very, very essential there. So what are some of the other sewing tools? So let's go through it little bit by bit today. So for this here, it's a seam ripper. Okay, so a seam ripper is like your best friend. As you sewing, trust me, sometimes you make mistake and you wonder, oh my goodness, how do I rip this thing off? This would make life easy. You just say, whew, and everything is fine because you have your seam ripper, of course, to rip out your mistake there. All right, next thing we have now here in our sewing closet, of course, is our scissors. We definitely want our scissors. Very, very important. We also have, you could have a little nipper here. Sometimes, you know, your scissors is to cut your fabric or to cut your thread, whatever the case may be. You also want maybe a small little nipper as well as you go along itself. That is very, very essential. And also you want a clipper. So this clipper is very, very important itself. Now, if you don't have a clipper, you know, you could still start your sewing. Of course, your scissors is fine, but it's also good to have a little clipper just to clip the thread out as you go along. So thank you so much for everyone who joined me on Instagram. Say hi. I'm so grateful for everyone who joined me today. Thank you so very much. All right, so let's go along here. So I have a few other things here. I'm going to introduce you to ruler. So you may need a ruler itself as you go along. You want to do a straight edge, you'll do a straight line, you want to do a pivot line, you want to develop your neckline, whatever the case may be. So a ruler, of course. And then if you have a long, like I don't have it here for some reason, we call it a yardstick, the very, very long, the long ruler itself that give you like 1 yard itself in measurement is very, very important as well as you go along. All right, so hand sewing needles is very much essential, of course, because sometimes if you're doing tailoring or if you're doing hemming a pants, hemming, I don't know, something itself, you may need your needle. It's your sewing hand needle itself, of course, as you go along. All right, so moving along here as well, you need your pin cushion, of course, and your pins. It's key, of course, as you go along. Like I like to teach with pins and needles, pins itself. So as you go along, you could pin your garment as you go along itself and make it very, very essential. Now, some people use fabric clip, and that's perfectly fine. And again, as you get better and better in your sewing journey, you may just put your garments together and sew it because you're competent in your sewing itself. Okay, so I'm going to introduce this here. I don't know if anyone have an idea what it is. If you do have an idea, you could actually comment. If this is your first time seeing this today, you could comment, or if you know what it is, wonderful. But anyway, I'm going to reveal what it is. It's a tracing wheel. It's very, very important to have, especially when you do upscale sewing, right? If you want to trace your pattern, for instance, I have some pattern here. Let's say you want to trace your patterns and you want your pattern itself. You don't want to cut the pattern out completely to that size. Like for instance, with this pattern, we have different sizes here. So you can see the 3 different line here. And maybe your size is a smaller size. So the tracing wheel would help you itself to trace that size, and you don't waste the other sizes itself. You could save it just in case if you had to make something for someone bigger in that size. So this really, really help you itself to preserve the pattern itself for the sizes. And more so, you need this with a tracing paper. So this is called a tracing paper. So the tracing paper here, now there's different colors as you can see here. All right, there's different color. You would have to lay this between your garment, and you could see, let me see if I have any of the marking here. If you look, there's a little bit of marking here. You can't see that well, but you would have to lay it between your fabric. Your tracing paper will lay between your this will lay between your fabric and your tracing paper, and then you will use this now to trace the line on your garment itself. So it's very, very essential itself. If you want to of course, you don't want to cut out the whole sizes, you just want to cut out the size that you actually need. The tracing wheel and the tracing paper, of course, is an essential tool, especially when you go upscale. May not be for beginner per se, but of course when you go upscale, it's an essential tool itself. All right, so you want to have your I'm just going to go to whatever I have here. I have seam ripper here. This is another tracing wheel, which is very, very important. Of course, you want to have again, this is not just for beginners, it's kind of going upscale as well, like mentioned. We have here, it's a curve. So it's a neckline curve. It could be a neckline curve. It's very, very fancy. So it could be a neckline curve. It could be an armhole curve. It could be whatever curve it is. And again, it also have some style detail. So if you want a very nice stylish neckline itself, you could actually use some of the nice curves instead. Or maybe you want a detail applique. So if you want to cut a piece of fabric itself to make a nice something on your garment, this is an essential tool itself you could definitely use. So thank you again so many for those who are watching me and watching the replay. I am so very, very grateful. Now, this is also called an armhole curve as well. It's a bigger one, right? And you have different directions. So it also have here for your buttonholes. So you could actually make your buttonhole distance measurement here. You could follow some of the distance for your buttonhole. It has different symbols that say you could actually use, not just for the curve, but for so many different things. You could use it here. And that is, of course, a great essential tool in your sewing closet. Now, this is more, again, upscale. It may not be for beginner per se. Beginner, you may just need your basic tools. But again, this is as you go along. It's essential to have as you go along. All right, so we have something called like a curve. So this could be like a hip curve. Let's say we're making a straight skirt and we want to make sure we have a nice hip curve itself. You could use this, of course, for your straight skirt hip curve there, and it gives you a nice essential curve. This is also could be used as a hip curve, although it's a little bit curvy. So you could also go, depends on if you want to make like you want to do a neckline itself. It could help you. It could also help you with the armhole curve. All depends on if you know how to manipulate it to make sure you get a nice curve. Compared to this one, it would give you a nice, beautiful curve. Like from this one, you see it's curved, but it's not fully. But again, all these could use as a hip line. Of course, you could use it as a neckline and as an armhole curve as well. All right, I have another curve here as well. So this one is in the plastic. I didn't take it out. But again, those are really, really cool curves when you go into more upscale itself. So who we are, we teach sewing classes, of course, in Brampton. That's in person. We also teach sewing classes online. For those who are interested, we have classes on a Friday, every other Friday. And of course, we will be starting to take intake for our advanced courses as well for those who are interested. So I also want to talk about some Notion. So Notion could be anything that you would use to put within to add detail itself to your garment, or just to help you out with your garment. So thread also could become a Notion. So it's also a Notion. Your seam ripper is a Notion because it helps you, to maybe unrip certain part of your garment and put it back. Button is a Notion. right? You also have your snips here, your fastener. Those are called notion. Zipper is a notion. So all those things is notion you put in your garment. So what other notion do you know that you could add to your sewing closet? So like I mentioned, some of the notion, it could be a fastener. It could be a button. Thread is a notion. So what other notion you know that you want to share with us? You could definitely comment itself below. All right, lastly, I'm going to show just two more things here. We have this is called a walk-in feet. It's very, very, very essential for your sewing machine, especially if you have a Singer sewing machine like I do, and you want to sew something like a heavier fabric. Like for instance, the fabric is leather or the fabric is more like a heavy fabric. You definitely want to use your walk-in feet. It would make life a breeze for you because, you know, as we know with our sewing machine, we have the small foot is not heavy. It's just to sew a light garment. But when you have a walk-in foot, which I would do a demonstration with it eventually, it makes life so easier for you. It makes your stitch come out flawless, very flawless. And of course, it's an essential tool, of course, as you go along as well. This is called a strap turner. So if you have a little, you know, you make a thin strap and you want to turn it nicely, you could even turn maybe your, I think, your hair crunchy as well, although I don't really do that. But a strap turner is very, very thin. It pulls, there's a hook here. Although this one is kind of broken off a bit, but there's a hook here that actually hook the fabric and actually could pull it nicely itself in general. All right, so that's pretty much our live today. I want you to just comment, let me know what sewing tools you have. If you have sewing machine, you have seam ripper, you have thread cutter, like whatever sewing machine you have and you want to share with us today, I would be so grateful to read your comments itself in general. Now, I want to thank you guys so very much for joining me today. Again, my name is Gellis. We teach you the art of sewing. That's where my heartbeat is. And most of my heartbeat is to let you know that Jesus Christ is the author of your soul. And one of the goals you could give yourself this year is to get to know him, of course, as your personal Lord and Savior. Thank you guys so much for joining me tonight. Have yourself a wonderful night. Take care, guys. Bye-bye.